Good morning, everybody. And thinking of the Great Commission, Jesus says, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, teaching all men all things that I have commanded you." And we heard from Mike Robinette some weeks back, and he was saying it is a great commission. But look at the extent of it. Go ye into all the world. And then he broke it down. He said that means into every country. That means into every city. That means into every street. That means into every home. That means into every person in every home, and teach them all things that I've commanded you. It really is a great commission. And you know, when the great modern mission movement was with William Carey, a couple of hundred years ago, in West Bengal, the population of the world was less than the population of India at the time. The changes are colossal. And India is now over 1.4 billion. And really, like when you think of world missions at the time of William Carey and Hudson Taylor, and that India itself is the population of the world at this time. It's a vast field. And, we just thank God that we can be somewhat a little part of it. But we're not going to do it all. But we can, do what we can with it. And I think, because we cannot do it all, we can get into the kind of way of striving, overstraining and over pushing. And it's such a balance. And just two stories from the Gospels. One is Mary, it's the sister who breaks the alabaster jar at Jesus' feet, and the great ointment fragrance fills the room, and they are saying it is a waste. She has poured out, it's a year's salary. And Jesus says, what she has been done, wherever the gospel is preached, it will be told of her. And Watchman Nee makes the point saying, it will be said because this is the gospel. This is what the gospel produces. It produces a devotion. A heart that is poured out to God, and a heart poured out to God that brings a fragrance and changes the whole atmosphere, and it will not be taken. So the other thing about it is that is on the week, around the time of Jesus' crucifixion, and he says, "She did this unto my burial. She anointed me unto the burial," and she poured out her life in this way, and that the gospel produces that. It produces a devotion like that. But the interesting thing is that they all fled. It came about, they were thinking, what a waste this woman is doing. And then Jesus said later, all of you will die. And they all fled, and Peter denied him Jesus 3 times. But she remains. She is at the tomb. She is at the cross. Assuming it's Mary Magdalene. But the point of what I want to say is that devotion is greater than courage. Like the courage and the commitment, and they did have courage and they did have commitment, the 12 apostles, and Judas of course accepted, but it was not as good as devotion. It was not as good as adoration. And somewhere in all our great commission and in all the great activity, we can't lose the devotion. We can't lose just worshiping Jesus. The poor you will always have with you, but me you will not always have, Jesus said. And that ability to just somewhere, part of our energy, part of our time, to be poured out in devotional, personal devotion even to Jesus Christ, because all our energy can go. Like some of I remember, is it A.M. Bounds or someone saying, it takes strength to pray. And if all our strength is spent on the work of God, there is no strength for prayer, nor is there time for prayer. It was the same thing George Muller did, was he made a point of showing that if you trust God somewhat in your work and give some of your time to God, God will provide what you would lose by extra working if you give that time to prayer. That was his whole reason of setting up the orphanages. And to show people that you trust God alone, God will provide for your needs, and you can give. And I'm saying that in context of the Great Commission because it is a work we're not going to finish. It is a great commission. India only, so vast, so great. And then as we said earlier, go into all the world, into every state, into every city, into every street, into every home, to every person in every home. How can we ever? And then teach them the gospel. Yes, teach them all things that I have commanded you, and to observe and do all things I've commanded you, discipling them. What a vast work that we have. We thank God that we can do what we can in it. But like the woman, there is part of it has to be reserved for devotion to Jesus Christ. And why? Because part of the work is what we do, and we are commissioned to do it. But part of the work is Christ's. Jesus says, I work and my Father also works. And I wanted to tell another parable. You can look it up yourself. It's Mark 4, and it is where he says, the farmer sows the seed, he plows the land, sows the seed, and it grows by itself. He does not know how. And then in harvest. And the point in the little parable is that the man plows, the man sows, but then it grows by itself. He does not know how. And then when it's fully harvested, then he reaps. So there's part of the work. It says he goes to sleep night and day, and it grows by itself. He does not know how. There is part of the work of God that we cannot do, and we have to just do our labor. But then we have to understand that he goes to sleep, and the thing grows of itself. The woman pours out devotion to Jesus Christ, and in that there is courage and faith that outdid the courage and the faith and the commitment of the disciples, a devotion. So we have different aspects, but we thank God for the work of God throughout the country. Amen. Amen.